Okay, looks like I'm live. Hi, this is Bill Patton, and I am the author of. Wait a minute, it's funny when I do this. I'm not sure which one's the corner for you, but anyway, I'm the author of Visual Training for Tennis, and I do believe it is a unique work in the tennis world and maybe even the sports world. There are not a lot of books about that topic. But anyway, the reason for this video is because my good friend Mike Boss sent me an article that was written recently, and uh, and it was about the dominant eye. And what I want to do in this video is talk about the importance of the dominant eye for tennis players. Um, So what I don't want to do is I don't want to run anybody down. I'm not going to bring up the name of the person who wrote the article, and I'm not going to bring up the names of the theorists who have different ideas. But, like you saw my thumbnail and it said, great minds think about ideas, right? It's the poor people who talk about people. So I'm not going to run anybody down here. But what I do want to do is I want to start with a story. So, and it has to do with when I went to Atlanta. My good friend Brian Shepard had me out to Atlanta to do some specialty clinics with his people. And, we had 25 people there for his ongoing clinics. And we did some testing of people, and we found out some stuff about them. But one of the interesting things that happened was 5 minutes before the clinic was going to start, a woman comes up to me and she knows that we're going to talk about visual training stuff. And she says to me, I have no depth perception. Right. And so I'm like, okay, how would somebody who doesn't believe in the dominant eye is important deal with that? Right. Well, I do happen to believe in that. And so I wasn't able to answer her question right there. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to solve her problem in the clinic. But the way it worked out was that when we tested for dominant eye and the interaction with the dominant hand, it gave her exactly the skill that she had to so-called develop depth perception, whatever that means to her. All right. So, that's really important is what's the practicality of this? What does it work? Do people get results? Now another result was that, a couple of years later, I went back out and I saw some people who had been at that original clinic. And this one guy, I think he was in his early 70s. And you can teach new tricks to old dogs. But anyway, he said that he began seeing the ball better from once and for all, after that initial clinic that we did years earlier. So he was super excited. I was excited to hear from him on that. So, so there's best results. There's the very best results that we can get. And then there's good results. People who have sort of incomplete knowledge can still get very good results, and that's good, right? And even marginal results by using traditional thought on vision, that's okay, but don't you want to go for the best? This is what I want to do. So now I'm going to get into this article. Let me pull that up here. I have to go here, and what did I do with that? Anyway, so the notion that was in this article was that there's a controversy when it comes to use of the dominant eye. Right now, the one person I will mention is Mouratoglou, because he had that video that went viral where he was talking about the importance of the dominant eye. And, that was a good video. I think it could have been presented a little bit better, right? But that's something that gets referenced in here. All right, now, um, so the article says, there's a widespread belief, in the tennis coaching world that eye dominance is important and you should use one eye over the other. Well, okay. So the research seems to indicate that 80% of your vision comes through your dominant eye. 80%. Now, that's average. So of course there are going to be people who are seeing even more out of their dominant eye. People who've had an injury to an eye, there's an exception. People who've had an injury to their dominant eye or their non-dominant eye, those percentages are going to skew, of course, right? So, that's another important issue is the individual differences. All right, so on average, 80% of your seeing comes through your dominant eye. That's really an important thing to latch onto. All right. And yes, of course, there are going to be people who are closer to being sort of ambivisual. I'm probably going to make up some new words today, right? So, that is in the realm of possibility. Now, one person who was not quoted in the article was Dr. Cheryl Calder from South Africa, University of Johannesburg, who essentially created the first doctoral study in visual training for athletes. So groundbreaking, and she has now tested hundreds of thousands of athletes, and she has found that no two people have exactly the same visual profile, so to speak. So everybody sees a little bit differently. So that's another thing to keep in mind is your experience of your dominant eye is different than my experience of mine. So coming up with a finite answer of is the dominant eye important or is it not? I'm going to say it's important for many, many people and maybe less important for some people, right? Because there's a lot that's not known. This is an incredibly vast topic, and it's really hard to know everything. Nobody knows everything about vision because it's such a mysterious thing. So the one thing that people, visual researchers have found is that if people differ widely, no two people have the same fingerprint, right? And so that's very different. Actually, there's a wider range of different experience that people have visually. So it might be the most unique thing about people is their visual experience. All right, so that's an important thing to keep in mind, is because you want to be open to that. You have to realize that people are going to see things differently than you, and you can't come up with finite things that for everybody, because that's going to lead you to like a cookie cutter approach, and that's a problem. All right, but suffice it to say that knowing your dominant eye and using your dominant eye and teaching people to do that is going to be a big part of it. Now, one of the really strange and lame things that's in this article was they were poo-pooing the idea that you could accurately test your your dominant eye by using the test where you put your arms out and you sight an object through your hands. And the excuse was arm fatigue. And I'm thinking that's really odd, but because no matter how tired my arms are, my left eye is always my dominant eye. So I don't, I tested again and again because I tested with people and it has never changed. So, and every once in a while though, you do that test and you find out that some people, do look through both eyes. So you find, a very small percentage of people who will not get an accurate reading. I don't think it's a large number at all. But anyway, the other sort of, for lack of a better word, anecdotal social proof that I have on this is that I haven't yet met someone who, when coaching them, I had them test their dominant eye and intentionally look through their dominant eye and, to sight the ball, who didn't then start seeing the ball better. So, then, the other interesting thing is that these experts that are quoted, say, of course you need fundamental visual health and you need to be able to have binocular stereo vision, depth perception. Yes, obviously so. But I think when people are trying to sight with both eyes, that actually gets confused, because what you really want to do is you want to train your dominant eye. You also want to train your non-dominant eye. And this kind of then gets into an issue of how much time and effort and commitment do you or your players want to make to this, right? So I would say, if you're a high performance coach, I'd highly recommend that you get some eye patches, and every once in a while, spend 5 minutes having your players put up the patch on their non-dominant eye, so that they're only using their dominant eye, and then 5 minutes where they're only using their non-dominant eye. And then what that does, to use an analogy, it would be kind of like a Bluetooth speaker. It pairs with your phone or with whatever, a computer or what have you, something that gives off that Bluetooth signal. So when you train your eyes in isolation like that, then what they do is they sort of gain a greater appreciation, and then your non-dominant eye will track better with your dominant eye. So, but that seems to empower the notion that you need to know your dominant eye and you want the non-dominant eye to pair with it. It doesn't diminish it. So the logic behind the article is something that I'm having a hard time with. Also, there's a guy, Dr. Peter Fatty. I'm not sure what school he's with. I have to look that up. But if you've heard my videos talking about apprehension, then you've heard his name. But he also is an expert on. He's also consults with Major League Baseball hitting instructors, and so he talks about how, through the stereoscopic vision, that your brain can track the arc of the ball, and it's the tracking the arc that is the major thing that happens, right? But even so, I think that really originates from intentionally sighting the ball with your dominant eye, and then let your non-dominant eye sort of passively help out there. So now, one thing that I like about this particular article is it does talk about how, you need to exercise your eyes, and there are lots of different drills you can do, but there's nothing given here about how to do that. So part of it seems, is an infomercial for sign up for their thing, and then they'll tell you how to do it, right? And then there's an expert is quoted who is supposed to be supporting the notion that the non-dominant eye is not so important, but then he shares a detail that when there's a 14 millisecond difference in processing speed for the dominant eye, and it might not seem like a lot, but it actually is. I mean, that's pretty huge, because it means being able to react 14 milliseconds sooner, right? Multiplied by, 500 shots in a match. So that cumulative time savings makes a big difference. So, and also I think there's an element of fatigue too, because when people are not using their dominant eye to see, then their eyes get more tired, and it's harder to concentrate for longer. All right, now in the article, the thing that Mouratoglou was quoted, and he talks about cross dominance and same side dominance, and the terminology that I stole from a golf study was pure dextral and cross dextral. Now, if you want to get really technical, and thank you, Chuck Tomlin, for pointing this out, if you really want to get technical, pure dextral is the right side and pure sinistral is the left side. But I don't want to talk about being sinister or what have you, but I also don't want to confuse people. So just go with me here. But if we say, if you're right eye dominant and right-handed, that's pure dextral. If you're left eye dominant and right-handed, it's cross dextral. Now, I believe we teach people better if they are cross dextral. And we don't teach people particularly well, I don't think, when they are pure dextral. And this isn't something that many other people are talking about. So it gets missed, and people, I think, start focusing on the wrong things here. But a couple years back, I was in Hilton Head, and Mark Kovacs was presenting, and he was talking about balance and positioning. And so I asked a question about eye dominance, and he said, yes, of course, that eye dominance will play a role in your balance and positioning, because you do want your dominant eye to be facing forward, and that will affect your stance. Now, I am not one to argue about stances or open, closed, neutral, semi-open. I don't argue about that stuff, because what I do when I'm coaching my players is I help them find their best positioning, and I try not to get too technical on that stuff. But suffice it to say that if I'm left eye dominant, and my backhand really struggled when I was keeping my head like this, because I'm sighting the ball with my non-dominant eye. My dominant eye cannot see past the bridge of my nose, and I mishit my backhand a lot. But when I learned to turn my head forward, now I'm seeing the ball better. And then, of course, that's changing my stance and my rotation. So, it stands to reason that works that way, right? And then, conversely, right, then I can come and I can turn my head forward to contact, right? The other way that it plays out is in the contrast between, say, Roger Federer and Serena Williams, right? And so, two of the greatest players of all time, right? It wasn't that long ago that Federer was the greatest player of all time, and now it's Djokovic. And Serena is certainly up there. I don't know if she's the greatest of all time. I also don't argue about that stuff, because it's generally very generationally focused. But anyway, the interesting thing is, here's the challenge. All right, I will challenge you this. Try to find a picture of Serena Williams looking at her racket as the ball is making contact. I scoured the internet for that, and all I could find were pictures of her looking ahead of contact. That to me would seem to indicate that she is pure dextral. And the strategy that seems to help people is to look ahead of contact. You want to look somewhere halfway between the bounce of the ball and your strings, and then you're going to use your peripheral vision to track that ball the rest of the way. You can focus on it, right? But you don't want to do this thing. And I have my video, how not doing like Federer might be the best thing for you. And you can watch, a 14-year-old kid in Alabama have his forehand transformed by not doing like Federer. Now, if you are cross-dextral, then you do want to do like Federer. You want to focus on that ball from the bounce into your strings and then have your head relatively still. So that comes from golf. There was a golf study that showed that pure dextral people should look halfway between the putter and the hole, and cross dextral people should look at their putter having looked at the hole. Okay, so not knowing if it would work, I went on the road with this, and I was in Arizona and doing a clinic, and I had been already doing this with my people, figuring out if they're pure cross dextral and identifying, the strategy that they should use to see the ball, and it worked. But it's interesting how when you take it on the road and you're going to go work with strangers, how things sometimes fall apart. Well, anyway, so I had a clinic in Arizona, and there were 16 participants, and it was really cool that 8 of them tested as pure dextral. So we sent them over to those 2 courts, and 8 of them were cross dextral. So they stayed here, and the percentages seem to be about 50-50, but I think tennis players are just very slightly more cross dextral. And I think partly that's because we don't teach pure dextral people very well. Anyway, we can do a better job of that. Anyway, so the cool thing was I had both groups try both strategies, and lo and behold, the people who were pure dextral found that they were seeing the ball so much better by virtue of looking ahead of the contact point. And the cross dextral people, by focusing on the ball coming all the way into their strings and having their head relatively still, also the same thing, right? Go look at pictures of Andre Agassi and see if you can see Agassi looking directly at contact. And, isn't he known for being one of the best players ever visually, because of the torture that his dad put him through with the ball machine? And, he's known for being able to go to hitting cages and hit 95-mile-an-hour fastballs like it's nothing. So Agassi, is one of the most visually gifted players of all time. And you will almost always, I shouldn't say almost always, find me a picture of him looking right at contact. I don't think you'll find it. It's going to be out in front. So this article, is trying to claim that eye dominance is not a big deal, but these particular things that I'm sharing with you now have been proven, and I'm giving you actual practical advice on what to do. But this thing just seems to be sort of trying to poo-poo the idea. All right. And so anyway, I kind of dismissed that notion. And, I think that if I could give you just a couple of more little practical pieces of advice that will help your players to have a better visual experience, is to make sure that they give their full attention to the ball coming out of the strings, that they don't try to have pinpoint vision of the ball for most of its flight, right? So just realize that your brain apprehends the flight of the arcing object, okay, and does a great job of getting you in position. I like what Jack Brody says. He says, line up your strings with the ball. So you see that arc, and then you go and you line up your strings with it, and you're going to hit very cleanly. And then finally, your eyes can only really focus for a very short period of time, and you actually need to be relatively still to make that happen. So you go get in position, right? And then the ball's bounced, and you can focus on it from there to there, and then you're done. And it's just a very short period of time, but more than a third of the time that you have to see the ball comes after the bounce of the ball. So that's the most important time to focus. It's also it's going to be the most helpful. If you're trying to focus the whole time, you're going to make yourself exhausted, and you're going to have really big breaks in concentration. and that can be really a problem in your game. So make sure that you're not trying to focus all the time. So, you know, a lot is made in this article about, you know, the advantages on forehands and backhands of using your dominant eye properly, but it's off track to me, because the real issue is cross dextral and pure dextral, and your own unique ability to see the ball or not. I mean, I've had people who are almost blind in one eye, you know, and so how do we reconcile that? How do we get them to see the ball better? You know, it's very important to realize that everybody's a little bit different as well. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I'm going to go back and look at comments. So if you have any questions or comments, just go ahead and put those in there, and I will come back and look at those a little bit later. So anyway, thank you, Mike, for sending me this article, and I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. And pretty soon I'll be getting visual training for tennis translated into different languages. I'm actually looking for some tennis coaches who are native speakers of different languages, like Spanish, French, and German, to translate these books for me. I actually have the translation. I just need it to be like corrected in actual, you know, language that is, you know, perfectly tennis, because the program that I use to translate it, you know, uses very generic language, so it has to be you know, set in the language of tennis. So if you would like to help with that, I'm paying people for that, so please help me out. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.